before start sessions, I'll start few videos regarding shoulder.
Yes, sir. Before starting the before starting the shoulder rehab, I want to show you the video of so how the people are moving their shoulders, and then how especially gymnasts are more prone for injuries. So this is a small video which I've taken from gymnastics persons who is doing shoulder dislocation. Sir, first fourth one, sir.
First, fourth.
Fourth one. Yeah, yeah. Down one, down one, down, down. No, no, no. Yeah. So I think everybody known about this kind of situation. I think each and every gymnast will do this kind of shoulder dislocation exercise. See how the dislocation is happening wantedly, especially for the gymnast who is required to do this as an exercise. So, enough, sir.
Okay.
So especially,
yes, doctor.
shall I open my screen?
Yes, doctor.
Screen share, sir?
Yes.
So as the previous video shows, especially in gymnasts, most of the people, they do this kind of dislocation in the shoulder. So definitely we can expect some kind of definitely rotator cuff injuries and shoulder dyskinesias, scapular dyskinesias will happen. So now whole my concept of coming into this session is how to do prehab, especially for the shoulder. So which is very important for the gymnast, and especially this kind of injuries is quite common in gymnastics people. Yeah. So as we all know that there are definitely dislocations will happen at the same time, rotator cuff tear will happen. These are all the different kinds of abnormalities in the shoulder. That is, this is called normal anatomy. That is humerus, scapula. This is anterior dislocation, and this is posterior dislocation. Anterior dislocation is very common, especially in gymnast or shoulder. Now, if you just see the introduction of the shoulder joint, so shoulder is joint nothing but glenohumeral joint we call. So it has more mobility than the stability. That means we don't have more stability. That means we have less stability when you compare with the hip. The hip is having less range, but it has more mobility. At the same time, the shoulder is having more mobility and then the less stability in the shoulder. If you see the sternoclavicular joint, if you see the shoulder which is connected to the axial body, for example, if you see like this is shoulder joint and which is connected with a small bone that is called clavicle to the axial skeleton, but all other shoulder joint is free from the body. So it is very connected with the very small joint with a small bone that is called clavicle. So that's why all the scapular muscles, that means the back of the scapular muscles are very important to hold the shoulder in a place. So scapulohumeral rhythm, which is very important. If you see, this is called scapula, a triangular big bone, and this is called humerus. So when we do any movement like this, first the scapula will give 1 degree and then the humerus will go for 2 degrees. That means 1:2 ratio. The scapula moves for 1 degree and then humerus moves for 2 degrees. If the scapula remains stationary, then the humerus cannot complete all the movement like till 180 degrees. If the humerus or if the hand is moving for 180 degrees means there is definitely movement of the scapula in 1:2 ratio. So the scapulohumeral rhythm is very important. For example, especially in the dislocations, post dislocations. After the dislocation, lot of people they go for immobilization. That means the stiffness will happen. So the movement in between the scapula and then humerus is immobilized, and then the stiffness will happen. If we mobilize exercises for the humerus alone, then it doesn't give 100% movement in the shoulder. Definitely, we have to mobilize the scapula, that is this triangular big bone. If you don't move the scapula, automatically the hand movement doesn't happen fully. So that's the reason why we should concentrate on the scapula at the same time humerus or hand movement. So scapular dyskinesias. Most of the people, if you see, if they stand in a normal position, you can see from the back point of view, the shoulder blades come like this. I'll show you the diagrams like this. This is one kind of scapular dyskinesia. This is another kind of scapular dyskinesia. This is another kind of scapular dyskinesia. In the third picture, definitely it looks almost like normal, but it is not normal. So this is why a clear observation on the shoulders who are going for the gymnast, for each and everybody, the observation is very, very important. Whether the scapula is up and down or whether scapula is popping up is very important. So let's see all the scapular dyskinesias, how can we evaluate and what can we do to prevent that kind of scapular dyskinesias. For example, this is called posterior tipping of the scapula. Just ask the person, for everybody, for example, let's take 10 people of gymnasts and then ask them to push the wall. Then automatically this is called posterior tipping. That means inferior border of the tipping of the scapula. As I told you, this is a triangular bone of the scapula. Only this portion is popping up. So why this is popping up? What is the reasons behind it for popping up this kind of scapula means? Two reasons. We need to think always three-dimensional view of our body. So for example, this area is popping up means there should be some problem, definitely yes. At the same time, there are some counteracting factors which are there from front side also. So which is very important. So for example, if this is called my chest, that is called pectorals. If they are tight, that is one factor, indirect factor. And the lower trapezius, for example, the origin of lower trapezius from here to there. If the lower trapezius muscle is weak, then automatically it will pop up. So the reasons for this are anterior tie structures, that is chest muscles, pec major and then pec minor, and then weak lower traps. That means, as I told you, here it happens to be there. And then serratus anterior. Serratus anterior is a magic muscle, as we can say. So serratus anterior is a muscle which is useful for the punching. So I'll show you in the next video how the serratus anterior is very important. So if this kind of people are seen, then definitely we need to strengthen lower trapezius and then serratus anterior, and we have to stretch the forward stretches, that is pec minor and pec major. Then this kind of dyskinesia will be coming down. Let's move on to the second one, that is winging of the scapula. Most of the people, they say, might have seen winging of the scapula. That means the whole entire portion of the scapula will be popping up like this. So it should be like this on the body. The two shoulder blades, one will pop up. If you just see, this is normal and this is popping up. So why this is happening? Like we'll see. So the winging of the scapula, that is this entire medial border of the scapula is popping up like this, mainly because fatigue of the scapular muscles. That means overall muscles which are there, like from here, trapezius, rhomboids, and then you can say like lower trapezius, upper trapezius, and lower rhomboids. If all these muscles are fatigued, or if at all any nerve entrapment is there, that means nerve injury, then also this can be caused. So that's why it's very important to rule out whether it is because of the nerve injury or because of the over fatigueness of the a person. For example, especially if you take gymnasts, lot of people they do use exercise for the shoulders. If they keep on doing continuously, these shoulder scapular muscles will be getting fatigued, and then after that if you see, they might get this kind of popping up little bit, not too much but little bit. So we need to work on it to strengthen or to increase the endurance of the scapular muscles. That will let you know after the slides of this how to strengthen the scapular exercises, scapular muscles, sorry. This is another kind of scapular dyskinesia. Here it's very least, you can see here if you see, the upper border is coming popping up little bit above like this, very little. So why this is happening? The displaced from superior middle of the scapula is mainly because of the impingement injury. So for example, lot of people they sit like this. I'll show you my side view if you don't mind. Most of the people they sit like this. When they sit like this, automatically, or because of the pectorals major and pectorals minor tightness, so they go like this, then automatically the supraspinatus, there is one muscle called supraspinatus. I'll show you, rotator cuff muscle. It gets impinged between the acromion process and the humerus when they do shoulder abduction or shoulder movement. This is how the impingement happens. Because of this, most of the people, for example, this is my right shoulder, so I'll keep little above like that to prevent the pain. In those cases, this kind of superior medial border will pop up. So we need to be very carefully observe the things. What is the main reason? Which part of the scapula is popping up? If it is lower, there are different structures we need to be understand. If it is total scapula, we need to understand different one. And if it is only upper portion of the scapula, we need to be understanding the impingement is happening, especially rotator cuff muscles. Next, we'll move on to
Doctor,
importance of, sorry,
excuse me, doctor. For shoulder, I got one question. What is frozen shoulder?
frozen shoulder. Yes, sir. For example, as I said, after any dislocation, usually they immobilize like this for 3 to 4 weeks for any dislocation. Then automatically all the muscles around the shoulder joint become very tight. At the same time, not only shoulder joint muscles, at the same time there is called capsule. So here if you see this slide, there is capsule is mentioned. That capsule is also very become, it becomes very tight. That is, this is anterior capsule, this is inferior capsule, and this is posterior capsule. So if this is tight, for example, I can't move it up. So because already this is like this for 3 to 4 weeks, automatically the inferior capsule become very tight. So when I try to move the hand, it will be stiff. So frankly speaking, like, simple way of doing. So this is called stiffness of the shoulder, and slowly it becomes to frozen shoulder. In frozen shoulder, usually it's a very chronic condition we generally call frozen shoulder. Not all the stiff shoulders are called as frozen shoulder. If, for example, after immediate dislocation, after the immobilization, if you do anchorage movements, the stiffness is because of the muscle spasm, and very little bit of component which is added because of the posterior capsule or inferior capsule. If it is delayed, that means the person is not doing any movements properly. If it is a normal person, not a gymnastic person, then automatically they don't do this kind of movements overall. So for example, probably they do activities still there, day-to-day activities. So this movement, they don't do it. Over a period of 6 months or 1 year, slowly it becomes stiff. Then all the muscles, all the ligaments, all the capsule, which is very tight, then it is called frozen shoulder, sir.
Thank you, doctor.
Yes, sir. So now, especially for the gymnasts, as I told you, like the people will sit like this. So when this is happening, if you see three-dimensional overview from the top, my chest muscles are becoming tight, my posterior capsule becoming tight, and my scapular muscles are becoming weak. So there are three tightened structures of the front side, that is chest muscles, pectorals minor, pectorals major, posterior capsule tightness, and at the same time weakness of the scapular muscles. So this is how in this, if you see in the first diagram, the person is standing with the rounded shoulders. So the second diagram is after the correction, like stretching of the pectorals, strengthening of the scapular muscles, and then stretching of the posterior capsule. So then it becomes like that. If the supraspinatus impingement is happening, definitely pectoral muscle tightness will be there, posterior capsule tightness will be there, weakening of the scapular muscles will be there. So that can be corrected by strengthening of the scapular muscles, by stretching of the pecs, and by stretching of the posterior capsule, which is there in the next slides. So now we'll move on to static and dynamic stabilization of the glenohumeral joint, that is shoulder joint. For example, static, what is meant by static and what is meant by dynamic stabilization means, if I'm just leaving my hand like this, I'm not carrying any weight, but still the shoulder has to work. There are some few muscles which has to work to hold the shoulder. That is called static stabilization. Dynamic stabilization, that means when they do movement with weight or without weight, still then, even then also the muscle has to be held properly, otherwise dislocations will happen. So that's the reason why it is called dynamic stabilization of the glenohumeral joint or shoulder joint. So let's go on to the these things very little detail about all these things. So first, before this static stabilization and then dynamic stabilization, we'll just little bit of discussion with the rotator cuff muscles. As we all know that rotator cuff muscles are four muscles. Sits, we generally call as sits muscles. One is, this one is supraspinatus, and this is infraspinatus, and this is subscapularis, and this is teres minor. So all these four muscles are called as rotator cuff muscles. So these are very, very important. Why these muscles are very important? So I'll tell you in the next slide. So the static stabilization of the glenohumeral joint, that means as I said, it is unloaded. That is, if you just hang your hand freely, that is called static stabilization. So what are all the different structures which are helping to hold the shoulder joint, shoulder joint in a proper position? So in this, passive tension in the rotator interval capsule. So what is meant by rotator interval capsule means this one.
हेलो डॉक्टर श्रीधर, शायद इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम है, वो आएंगे 1 मिनट में. वेट. तो जब तक डॉक्टर दोबारा ज्वाइन होते हैं, थोड़ा सा हम लोग शोल्डर के ऊपर बात करते हैं कि अभी उन्होंने जो शोल्डर में बताया है, शोल्डर इंजरीज के कारण कि हमारी शोल्डर के जो डिफॉर्मिटीज होती हैं वो क्या क्या है, और शोल्डर में मेनली प्रॉब्लम कैसे आ रही है, हम किस तरीके की प्रॉब्लम को किस तरीके से सॉल्व करना है. तो अभी ये जो लास्ट उन्होंने बताया कि नॉर्मली स्टेबलाइजेशन एंड मोबिलाइजेशन बहुत जरूरी है शोल्डर का, तो उसके ऊपर ये अभी कुछ एक्सरसाइजेस और इसके बारे में कुछ आगे बात करेंगे. बट हमें किसी भी चीज के बारे में जानने से पहले उसकी थोड़ी हिस्ट्री एंड ज्योग्राफी पता हो तो काफी अच्छा रहता है. तो शोल्डर के बारे में ये थोड़ी इन्फॉर्मेशन है, कौन कौन से मसल्स ग्रुप हैं, कौन सी मसल्स कहाँ से जुड़ी हुई है. तो उन्होंने जो पहले बताया था कि हमारी स्कैपुला और कैल्विकल, जो एससी आपको इंट्रोडक्शन में बताया था, स्कैपुला और कैल्विकल जॉइंट है, वहां से कनेक्टेड है. मैं ट्राई करता हूँ कॉल करने की डॉक्टर को, शायद उनका इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम हुआ है. जस्ट वेट फॉर 1 मिनट. It's okay. Doctor, can you please place your जब
Yeah, static stages. Yeah. Static stabilization of the shoulder joint means if I'm not holding anything, just it is in the air. For example, like this. It is in the air, I'm not holding anything. So then what are all the different structures which are holding my shoulder joint not to go down or not to go up? So there are, one is rotator cuff interval, rotator cuff interval capsule, and then air trach capsule, that is negative pressure inside the capsule, so that holds the shoulder joint close. Another one is glenoid inclination. For example, if you see the scapula, if you see the scapula, this is not oriented straight. This is, for example, straight. Then what will happen? Automatically, the humerus will come down like this. If it is little bit outside, for example, this is my right scapula, it is straight. It will be like this, little up, so that it stays there. So it won't come down. So that is static stabilization of the shoulder joint. Now, when it comes to loaded static stabilization, for example, I'm just holding a bag. So, but I'm not moving it. So just that is called loaded static stabilization. Then what are all the different structures in the shoulder which are responsible to hold the weight without movement are, so as I said in the previous slide, static stabilization means rotator interval capsule is taking the load. So when you hold a weight, for example, 5 kilos weight bag or something like that, that rotator interval capsule cannot take the load. So that's why the supraspinatus, that means the rotator cuff muscle, for example, I'll show you, sir. This is supraspinatus. That means the muscle here which is there, that is called supraspinatus. This will take the load. For example, if I'm holding a bag of 5 kilos, then this will take the whole load, and the thing is rotator interval capsule. Because it is not taking the full load, the supraspinatus is helping to hold the load. That's why most of the people, if they carry something in a day-to-day ways, like for example, they go into a market and carrying weight, they feel pain here. That is the supraspinatus muscle which is loaded. That's why it is giving pain. So loaded arm static stabilization is done. That means without any movement, how the stabilizing factors are helping. Now dynamic stabilization of the GH joint. That means if I'm moving my shoulder in any activity, what are all the different structures which is stabilizing in the shoulder joint? That is very important, especially for the gymnasts, because they take a lot of load. So if you see this diagram, so the deltoid muscle is this. So when the deltoid is pulling like this, so usually, generally what we think is the deltoid, this muscle is acting means the hand is going sideways. Not exactly. The overall movement, this movement is happening means it is not only because of the deltoid. It is mainly because of all these four muscles: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, subscapularis, and teres minor. Only the deltoid function is to pull the scapula. I mean, this is humerus. This is humerus. This will go up. That's it. It won't do this kind of movement. So the deltoid acts means this will go up, and at the same time, if the hand is moving like this, for example, the all rotator cuff muscles has to work. Then the force of inclination happens this way. If you see, then the hand moves up in this direction or in this direction, whatever the direction you want. So not only the deltoid muscle which is responsible for the movement of the shoulder joint, all the rotator cuff muscles, four muscles are which are very important to give a factor of pressure. So cause of dynamic stabilization of glenohumeral joint. That means if you give lot of pressure or lot of load on the rotator cuff or during dynamic stabilization, what are all the different structures which are becoming wear and tear or injuries will happen during the dynamic stabilization? That means during the movement. if they are not taking, if the load is too much. For example, I can carry 10 kilos of load, but if I carry 15 kilos of load and do some kind of activity or rotation, some kind of activity, if I do more repetitions, then muscles will go for fatigue, then injury happens. So what are all the different injuries might happen in dynamic stabilization of the glenohumeral joint means supraspinatus tendon tears, supraspinatus impingement, rotator cuff tear, any muscle can tear, AC joint degenerative changes, bicipital tendons, there is a small muscle here that is called biceps, this one, this biceps, you know, this biceps tendon, here is the tendon, it becomes inflamed. And of course, last and least one is dislocation of the shoulder. So this is very important slide. So as I told you, the shoulder dyskinesias. So if at all any shoulder dyskinesias, or if you want to blindly rehab or prehab exercises for the shoulder scapular muscles, then this is the only one slide which is helpful for each and every shoulder problem. So we need to strengthen upper trapezius, lower trapezius, and then serratus anterior. Usually upper trapezius, most of them, they do a lot of exercise like this, or holding some weights and doing like this. So then usually this becomes very tight. We should be always seen, this muscle should not go for spasm, at the same time should be strengthened. And this is lower trapezius. So as I told you in the previous slides, for example, this one. In this example, if the lower trapezius is strengthened, this won't be happening. So that's what it does mean. So the serratus anterior, that is punching muscle. So which is very important. You can do in open kinematic like this, on weight bearing in the crawling position also you can do it, or you can strengthen the serratus anterior, which is very important. Serratus anterior main function is, we know the scapula, right? So this is scapula, triangular bone, which sits on the thoracic cavity. That means on the rib cage, on the back side. So if the serratus anterior is weak, this scapula, triangular bone, will pop like this. If the serratus anterior is good in position or good strength, if it is having good strength, automatically the scapula or the triangular bone which sits on the thoracic, and then there is less injuries on the shoulder. So as we all know that rotator cuff injuries will happen if it is, for the small information, the small rotator cuff tear means it is less than 1 to 1.5 centimeters. If it is if tears more than 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters, it is called medium. And then it is 2 to 3 centimeters. If it tears, it is called large. Massive means almost the total tear of the rotator cuff more than 3 centimeters. So now we'll move on to the shoulder rehab. What are all the different kind of exercises which can be done to improve shoulder dyskinesias, at the same time strength, the scapular muscles, at the same time shoulder muscles.
Okay, so doctor, I have one question. So somebody asked about frozen shoulder. So frozen shoulder rehab and this rehab, they both are same or any difference?
No sir, there is a lot of difference. To prevent anybody to prevent frozen shoulder, for example, I don't have any frozen shoulder right now. As my age increases, definitely I may get it. So for that, like prehab, we need to do all these exercises which I'm telling, that will be helpful. For the frozen shoulder, after once we get the frozen shoulder, then it is entirely different, but ultimately strengthening is the same regime. Okay. But we need to get the movement. So that movement can be getting through different kind of mobilizations, so which we do it regularly. So we have Calton bone mobilizations, we have Mulligan mobilizations, and then we have facial manipulation, different techniques to improve the range of the shoulder. So for example, in the frozen shoulder, it comes like this and it stops there. So this entire movement will be gone. So to get this or to regain this range from here to there, we need to do some accessory movements to improve the shoulder range or different capsule stretches, different mobilizations. After that, strengthening regime is same, sir.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Yes, sir.
We can go.
So, so in the shoulder rehab, first is pain management. It can be done through the medications, or it can be done by through some modalities of ultrasound and stimulator, IFT, whatever. So now if we go through the shoulder scapular stabilization and then scapular exercises. So in the shoulder rehab, always we need to understand this anatomical train, sir. For example, if you see the shoulder front side, so the core muscles are slowly connected to the shoulder. At the same time, if you see the glutes are connected through the shoulder through fascia. So the recent study says if I am having shoulder dyskinesias or different any abnormalities in the shoulder or scapula, we need to strengthen not only shoulder, not only scapula, at the same time we need to strengthen glutes, lower back, and then core. For example, if I am throwing a ball, so that means the movement is happening at the shoulder. Usually what we think, if the load is very high, definitely the movement causes some kind of injury in the shoulder. So the amount of generation from the ground reaction force, how it is coming means, if I stand like this, the ground reaction force come from my right leg, right buttocks or right glutes, and then it goes to my left side. So for example, if I'm throwing, I'm a right-handed and throwing right hand, this is my right hand, I'm throwing this side. Now I'm taking support from my left leg. That means opposite glutes. So I have to take generation of force from the left glute, and then that is transmitted to the opposite shoulder, then I can throw. If my glutes are weak, for example, these glutes are weak, then I can't generate much force to throw the ball. So that's why the glutes and core strengthening is very important. That's why glute strengthening, core strengthening, and then back extensors, especially multifidus, those are stabilizers. Those are very important to improve the shoulder condition. This is a recent research which is developed.
Yeah, doctor, can I just translate it to Hindi? Just 1 minute, if you.
Yes, sir.
यहाँ पे ये बता रहे हैं कि अगर आपके शोल्डर का रिहैब है तो शोल्डर के रिहैब के लिए आपको सिर्फ शोल्डर का ही एक्सरसाइज नहीं करना है, क्योंकि हमारा शोल्डर जो आप पिक्चर में देख पा रहे हैं आगे से और पीछे से कनेक्टेड है हमारे कोर मसल से एंड पेट्रोसिस मसल से, और बैक में ग्लूट से और लोअर बैक ट्रिपेजियस से. सो हमें उनको भी साथ साथ मेंटेन करके चलना है, तब हमारा इफेक्ट ज्यादा शोल्डर के ऊपर आएगा. क्योंकि हमारी बॉडी का मैकेनिज्म ऐसा है कि अगर हम, जैसे अभी इन्होंने एग्जांपल देके बताया कि अगर हम कोई बॉल थ्रो करते हैं या फिर कोई शोल्डर की भी एक्सरसाइज करते हैं तो उसके लिए हमारा नीचे से ग्लूट से लेके बैक से लेके पूरी मसल्स इन्वॉल्व होती है. सो हमें उनको भी साथ साथ रिहैब करके जाना है. यस डॉक्टर.
Yes. If for example, if I don't use my lower body and then throw the ball, I can just simply my generation of force is very less. This much I can do. So if I take generation of force from the ground reaction, from the legs, glutes, and then back, then I can throw it very fast with a great force.
Yes, sir.
So in our rehab, we include shoulder rehab, scapular rehab. That means at the same time, core strengthening also I have to involve. Otherwise, we don't get proper strength in the shoulder or scapular strengthening. So now scapular stabilization, that is the triangular bone which is connected by the different kinds of muscles. So those things has to be stabilized. That is called different muscles, rhomboids. So this is the first exercise for the scapular. For the scapular stabilization of exercises. So rhomboids, we know this is the rhomboids exactly there like this. So as the patient stand like this and then just has to pull it back. So for example, if the patient is sitting like this, so then we have to, if the patient is sitting like this, the back muscles are weak, so we need to pull it back. So, and then at the same time, we need to move the hands back. Two steps. One is pulling up shoulders, at the same time pulling up back to the hands. This is called lower row. This is also static stabilization exercise for the scapula. This is scapular setting in neutral. So say take a ball and then onto the wall, and then we have to move the ball in clockwise directions. For example, 12 degrees, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock. So in that way we have to move. But you can ask me a question. This movement is happening, but this shoulder is static like this. Only your hand is moving. So if you see, this is one thing. Now I stabilize my shoulder and then doing the movement. This is another one. So this is very important, so that the proprioception for the shoulder is happening here. So this is very, very important. This is main food for the scapula. Especially those frozen shoulders, they can do this kind of exercise because there is no movement in the shoulder. So only the scapula is very, very important. In those frozen shoulders, automatically the hand goes forward like this. Because of the pain, if you observe me, my right shoulder is affected, that shoulder becomes like this. It comes forward than the left hand. So if we just strengthen the scapular exercises, that is very important. This is retraction of the scapula movements. In this, there is a progression. The previous slide, only retraction of the scapula, that is triangular bones. Now he is lifting the both hands. So as you all know that scapular exercises, this is called Y exercise for the scapula. But main thing is we need to activate lower trapezius, which is very important. For example, I'm like this. I have to pull it back, or retract my shoulder blades like this back. But while doing this kind of T exercise or Y exercise, most of the times the posterior deltoid will activate. That means this muscle will activate. That is not correct. And this is W and this is L exercise for the scapular.
Doctor, can you repeat again the 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock?
Okay, sir.
This is for the stabilization. ये stabilization के लिए exercise है. जैसे घड़ी में आपके 12 बजे हैं, 3 बजे, तो उसी direction में shoulder को रखना है और ball को movement कराना है. Yes.
But main thing is, see sir, the thing is, in this, usually many of them have a doubt that the shoulder is moving. Okay. So the main thing is the shoulder is relaxed now. So you need to tighten it. That means this is very tight now. So in this position only you need to move little bit, not like too much. So this is, for example, very tight. I'm just putting it to 12, 3, 6, 9. Very little. So you have to basically keep all the muscles engaged and then do a little bit of movement up and down and left and right.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
This will improve the proprioception of the shoulder. So we have to do in both the ways. One is open eyes, another is closed eyes. So we need to do.
ये एक्सरसाइज हमें आंख बंद करके भी करनी चाहिए और आंख खोल के भी करनी चाहिए, जो कि प्रोप्रोसेप्टिव के लिए बहुत अच्छी है शोल्डर के.
Yes, sir. So rotator cuff strengthening, which is very, very, very important, as I told you before, because lot of gymnasts, they do undergo for rotator cuff injuries. So in this, there is a 3-rule principle. As I told you, shoulder rehab means not only the shoulder, we have to involve the core and then glutes. So 3-rule principle is shoulder retraction for any exercise which you are doing for the rotator cuff. We need, see, this is normal position. For example, we need to retract the shoulder and then tuck your tummy. So we need to take tummy little bit like this, and then tighten the glutes. These three rule principle always has to be maintained. That is shoulder pull, tummy tuck, glutes tight. With these three rule principle, we have to do the further exercise, especially for the rotator cuff. Then only it goes to the proper rotator cuff muscles. Otherwise, it goes in different ways.
Yes,
So which
अगर
is
आप
not
ये
useful.
तीन चीजों पे ध्यान नहीं देंगे तो आपका एक्सरसाइज किसी दूसरी मसल्स पे कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा और वो मसल्स इम्बैलेंस में होगा. हम सोच रहे होंगे कि वो हमारा रोटेटर कफ का एक्सरसाइज है, बट वो नहीं होगा, वो किसी और मसल्स पे इफेक्ट करेगा. Yes, doctor.
Generally, a lot of people they do exercise like this with the TheraBand inside and outside. Okay, so if they do it like, for example, like my shoulder is forward and then I'm doing like this, there is no use. So for that, I have to retract my shoulder, tuck my tummy, and then tighten my glutes. Then if I do it, or if I do this, it will go to the correct rotator cuff muscle.
First, get your correct body position and then do the exercise.
Yes, sir, exactly. So we need to remember all these three principles while doing the following exercises by default. Supraspinatus, which is very important muscle. So this is empty can test, usually to elicit supraspinatus impingement or supraspinatus tendinitis. In the same way, we have to do the exercises. In this also, if you just observe the person is retracting the shoulder, tucking the tummy in, and then tighten the glutes, then we have to do the exercise. Then only it goes to supraspinatus. This is infraspinatus for external rotation. As I told you before, lot of people they don't do it like this. They just do it like this and then do it. So in this also, if you just observe this person, so she did retraction. That means shoulder in a position, and then tummy tuck, and then glute side. Then we have to do the exercise like this. This is for infraspinatus. Subscapularis, which is very strongest muscle. Same thing inside we have to do it. Same shoulder retraction, tummy tuck, and then glute tightening, glute contraction, and then do the exercise. So now rotator cuff strengthening is over. Now the capsular stretches are very important. For example, if some of them they can, for example, can everybody touch like this? So if, yeah. So now try to do on the other side.
No.
Definitely bit difficulty will be there.
Yes, there is a gap.
Yes. So one side which is normal and the side which is not. But most of the gymnasts definitely they do have to maintain this flexibility. For that flexibility, these capsular stretches are very, very important. So for the inferior capsule, that means this is inferior capsule as I told you. This is anterior capsule. This is inferior capsule, this is anterior capsule, this is posterior capsule, back side. So first we'll see the inferior capsule like this. Keep one hand like that and then pull it down. So you can see exactly the inferior capsule is stretching.
It will help in frozen shoulder also, doctor.
Yes, sir, frozen shoulder, but for them it is a bit difficult, sir, because this needs lot of range.
Okay.
So we can do posterior capsule, that is which is coming in the next slides. That can be done. So this is posterior stretch. The first diagram you said they can, if they have this much of range, they can do this. Then posterior, this is posterior capsule, right? So they can do this initially. After that, the second one is called sleeper stretch. This is a bit difficult. So once they get good improvement, then they can start doing this posterior capsule stretch in sleeper stretch. This is anterior stretch. For the anterior, this one, you have to hold one wall and then turn the body. Then automatically this will open up. Or else, this is, as I told you, because of a lot of improper postural differences or postural dysfunctions, we may get pectorals major and pectorals minor tightness. This is an excellent stretch for the pec major and then pec minor.
ये जो स्ट्रेचेस है ये हमें प्रैक्टिस के बाद डेली करना चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर हम प्रैक्टिस के बाद ये स्ट्रेचेस करेंगे तो आपका शोल्डर प्रॉपर वे में रहेगा, इंजरी होने से बचेगा।
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. True. So as I told you, so I'll definitely incorporate core strengthening exercise along with the shoulder scapular strengthening exercise and then rotator cuff strengthening exercise. These are all the different core strengthening exercise. I think you might people definitely know all these exercises, but I just wanted to just you know let you know. It's a bilateral SLR lifting both the legs, but usually how we have to do it means while doing the exercise, generally we lift the both the legs. That is not the correct way of doing. First we need to tuck the tummy, maintain that, and then we have to do the both the legs raise. Any exercise for the core. Otherwise what will happen, it goes to the rectus abdominis. That means the six pack muscle. You know that six pack muscle. So that will take, that creates lot of pressure inside, intra-abdominal pressure, and it creates tension or pressure on the nerves or disc. So if the pressure is more on the disc, then automatically it impinges or it pushes the nerve. That's why we should not give any stress on the rectus abdominis, on the six pack muscle. That's why we need to tuck the tummy. That is for transverse abdominis. Tuck the tummy in and then lift both the legs. Any exercise for the core. So if you don't tuck the tummy, then definitely expect some kind of radiating pain in the legs, that is sciatica pain.
हमें ये कोई भी हम ऐसे कोर की एक्सरसाइज करते हैं तो कोर की एक्सरसाइज करने से पहले हमें टमी को टक करना चाहिए, तो वो करेक्ट आपका उस पे जाएगा। अदरवाइज वो एक्सरसाइज जो है डिफरेंट मसल ग्रुप, मैं नाम भूल गया, व्हाट इज द नेम?
रेक्टस सर, रेक्टस सिक्स पैक मसल, सिक्स
यस,
पैक,
रेक्टस सिक्स पैक मसल्स के ऊपर चला जाएगा और उसको हमें टेंशन में नहीं लाना है।
internal abdominal pressure will increase, so then disc pressure will increase, pressure on the nerve, it gives you sciatica pain in the future.
Yes doctor, thank you. You
Yeah.
can.
So these are all the different advanced core exercises, that is plank, side plank. So you know, reverse plank, and then this is adding some of lifting legs in plank only. So this is different kinds of exercise for the core. Now there are some few videos for advanced rehab. So now I'll show you, sir. Can you just show the videos of shoulders, sir, especially?
Yes. Please stop your screen sharing, then I'll show it.
Okay, sir.
Just shall I start randomly?
Yes, sir. You can start, sir. So if you see this this kind of movement, now he is doing different kind of directions. In one hand this direction, on one hand other direction. This is more complicated. This is called PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation exercise. As I told you, the serratus anterior, this is punching exercise. Now this is weight bearing exercise for the serratus anterior and to increase the proprioception of the shoulder. So yeah, as I told you, serratus anterior, the punching. So actually the TheraBand which he is using is silver and then black, both he is using, which is very difficult to do that, which is very, very important to keep the scapula, that is the triangular bone, exactly on the thoracic rib cage. This is serratus anterior strengthening.
Right.
This is same exercise, but we have included a little bit complicated moving sideways. This is push-ups on the bar. For this advanced thing, reverse thing happening, like the leg should be on the top of the bar and the body should be downwards, then he has to do the push-ups. Progression of this exercise. especially the throwing exercise. He is a cricketer basically, so the throwing is very important for him. So this is throwing technique, how to do it with engaging all, like core. He is doing tummy tuck, and then he is throwing the ball always.
Yes, doctor.
Yes. So this is the shoulder rehab. Especially these exercises can be done like prehab for each and every individual. This gives lot of strength for the scapular muscles at the same time, rotator cuff muscles at the same time. Scapular, the capsule stretches will improve the flexibility. These are all very important, especially for the gymnasts. And don't forget the core muscles. Core muscles are very, very important. Thank you. The shoulder rehab is done, sir.
Okay, so we can move in ACL.
Yes, we'll move with the return to sport activities after the post ACL reconstruction.
Yes, doctor, please share your screen. Yes. अभी हमने शोल्डर के रिहैब के बारे में, एडवांस रिहैब की जो बात की है, ये जो एक्सरसाइज है हमें डेली अपने रूटीन में डालनी है ताकि ये इंजरी होने से बचाए हमारे शोल्डर को। और अभी हम ACL RTS की बात करेंगे।
So this is very interesting topic, especially post ACL rehab, return to sport in post ACL reconstruction. So which is very, very important, especially for the athletes, gymnasts, and everybody. So let's see the introduction for the ACL. I'll just give a small introduction to the ACL. What is that? What anatomically presents? What is the main function of that? And what is the biomechanical aspect? What is the pathomechanics and everything? Just for one slide. So the most common injuries which happens in the athletes are contact or non-contact sports is ACL. Patients who undergo surgical reconstruction of the ACL use from the first day onwards only. They use we start physical therapy from the day of post surgery, and then progress till their return to sport activity will be along with them, and then we'll help them. The most evident application for obtaining maximum benefit to enhance the people who are underwent for ACL reconstruction are the following factors which are there. So the muscles around the knee joint, as we all know that quadriceps, thigh muscles, hamstrings, back of the thigh, tensor fasciae lata, IT band, hip adductors, sartorius, and then gracilis. These are the brief muscles which are around the knee joint. And if you see the anatomy of the ACL, so the ACL length is around 38 mm, width is around 10 mm, made up of collagen fascicles, and then it is microscopically interlacing. For that means internally they are interlaced in between each and every fibril. And then what is the main impact of the ACL injury means ACL injury is having different mechanoreceptors, Raffini, Pacinian, different kinds of receptors. From the date of injury to the surgery, these mechanoreceptors generally we call as proprioceptors. So these will come down. The rate of mechanoreceptors will come down from the injury to the surgery. So that means the fast rate of decrease in mechanoreceptors which is happening in the ACL. That's why most of the people, they are a little bit of bad in proprioception, and then they go for once again go for injury, reoccurrence of the injury. That's why it's very important. Proprioception is very important. So if you see the biomechanical function, so mainly what it contains, for example, this one is tibia, the leg bone. This is femur, the thigh bone. So if the ACL is there, the tibia, if it is in contact, then it doesn't go forward like this. So this is forward. So it prevents forward movement of the tibia. So it holds like that. So that's the reason why after the ACL injury, the people, they feel like it is coming out, it is popping out, kind of instability kind of thing will happen. And it actually controls the rotation of the tibia. That means this tibia actually externally rotates. So it prevents external rotation of the tibia. That's the reason why the ACL mechanical injury is little flexion, that means like this, and then rotation. If this happens, the ACL, most of the times the ACL will be gone. That is flexion and then external rotation of the tibia or rotation of the tibia. Pathology of ACL. So researchers believe that the external and internal factors associated with ACL injury. What are all the external factors and what are all the internal factors from the body? So that is explaining here. External factors include any play where the injured athlete coordination is disrupted just prior to landing or slowing down. That means while doing deceleration, while stopping the movement, if the force is more, or if the person is unexpectedly landing, or if the person is decelerating unexpectedly, that is meant by external force, or the load is more. Another thing is internal factors include increased hamstring flexibility. That is, if the hamstring flexibility is too much, or increased foot pronation, that is nothing but flat foot. Most of them, they have flat foot, so that the tibialis posterior muscle is weak, and the knee valgus comes there. And then variation in the nerves and muscles which controls the position of the knee. For example, if the muscles around the knee are weak, then definitely the proprioception will be less, the strength will be less, at the same time the endurance will be less. That is internal factors which are causing ACL injury. This is a common clinical test which is very reliable, Latchman test. You can see the knee is flexed to 20 to 30 degrees, and then if you just translate the tibia anteriorly by holding the femur or by stabilizing the femur, it moves up or it pops up little bit up anterior. That is called Latchman test. And everybody knows this anterior drawer test. We need to stabilize by sitting on the foot and then holding or grab the tibia around the leg and then pull it. Then automatically the instability you can see. That means there is some notch which can be seen at the top of the patella or down the patella. So in the surgical treatment, different grafts can be used. One is allograft, that means outside, and then patellar tendon graft, that means it is BTB, and then hamstring tendon graft. These three things are used, but most commonly used is hamstring tendon graft. And if it is any re-injury occurs or something like that, then they usually go for patellar tendon graft, which is very strong.
Doctor, I got one question. Can I ask?
Sorry, sir.
Regarding knee, I got one question. Can I ask you?
Please, sir.
Does the athlete gain full stabilization in knee joint after ACL reconstructions? If not, so what is the percentage?
Sir, it mainly depends on, there is one criteria, sir. So that's what I will be discussing with that. If the criteria is meeting almost out of 100 points, if it is more than 95 points, it can be met. And then if you know the isokinetic strengthening checking, so that isokinetic machine is there. If you want exclusive quadricep strength, no. If you want to know, or if you want to know exclusive hamstring strength, then isokinetic machine is used. If functional testing, if you want to do different functional testings are there, that has to be done properly within a biomechanical proper way.
Okay, I think this will be come in your next slides.
Yes, sir. Next slides.
Okay, doctor.
So same thing. So in the previous shoulder also, I added the same slide. So definitely the core muscles, row of core stability, the muscles crossing the hip joint, and then lumbar spine, that means back of the lower lumbar, and then inferior thoracic spine, colloquially referred as, it's normally referred as from nipples to the knees. these all the muscles which are involved from the nipples to knees are very important to prevent the ACL injuries. If you don't strengthen all these muscles from nipple to knee, then lot of knee valgus load is more happening, and then definitely ACL tears or ACL injury might happen. It is proved that stable base is created for better lower extremity control and reduced ACL injuries, as I told you. So how can we do the test for the core? So these are all like little bit of more advanced. So especially for the return to sport criteria, this has to be done. So assessment of the core endurance test. The first one is prone plank test. So how much time he is holding, that is very important. There is a separate scale for this. At the same time, side bridge test. This one. In this also, how much time for a minute out of 60 seconds, how much time he is holding, that is also one separate scale is there. All these three scales put together and then will come out of the core endurance test. And this is flexor endurance test. That means he has to hold in that particular posture for how many seconds is that matters. This is how we can see the core stability of an athlete. Yes, now we know the core stability is very important for ACLs. At the same time, how far the hip stability is important for the ACLs during landing, especially for the gymnast. They do what do you call? They jump from what I forgot, sir. Actually,
saltos.
Saltos, and they jump from the vault. Yes. Vault. So after doing vault, they come into a roll in the air and then land on the particular place. If the landing is not correct, then definitely might happen. Definitely it might happen with ACL injuries. So definitely the hip stability is very important. For example, if you see the first two diagrams, in that particular first diagram, the hip stability is less. That means the hip abductors, we generally call this is hip abductors, both the sides. If these are weak, then automatically during the landing, the knee will go like this to hold it. So if this is strong, during the landing, it stays stable. Automatically, the knee position is also straight. That's what the first diagram is showing. If the hip is weak, if you see the knee is knocking, so the distance between the two knees is less. And then ankle is going for flat foot. This is called knee valgus. This is a main important factor for ACL injuries. If you see this, the hip control is good. That means hip abductors are holding it tight properly. The knee is straight, the foot is straight. In this, hip is somewhere, knee is somewhere, the foot is somewhere. So this is very important factor which always needs to be checked during landing. This is very important mechanics which has to be checked during the landing. So weak abductors, unstable hip create valgus load on the knee, especially during landing. This is valgus knees. This angle creates ACL injuries. See, what are the common compensatory movements which can be happened if the same weak abductors. If you see the first diagram and second diagram, it seems to be normal, but it is not normal. It's a compensatory movement. So if you see the first diagram, same hip is somewhere, the knee is somewhere, foot is somewhere, and then if you see the body is also leaning onto the right. So the second diagram, this is compensatory movement, how she is compensating the movement. So now in this second diagram, you can see that hip, knee, and then foot are looking like in the same line, but it is not, because if you see the body is bending to the left. Here the body is bending to the right. So by doing compensatory movement of the upper body towards the left, she is doing this compensatory movement, but this is also wrong. This is how we need to see compensatory movements. Otherwise, it is very difficult to strengthen which muscle has to be strengthened, and then obviously the ACL injuries will happen. So basic, generally, what are all the differences in the gender, especially in core and lower limb, especially in the gymnast? There is a separate topic on this. So especially females are more prone for ACL injuries than the males. There are definitely some different defects are there. What are all the defects means are the causes? Anatomical variation in the hip, that is one. Hormonal, that means hypermobility. The females are more hypermobile than the males because of the hormones. And then neuromuscular and biomechanical factors also compromised the females. That's why they are getting more ACL injuries than the males. So this is the slide which explains the difference between the male and then female. This is called static single leg squat test. Single leg squat test. Static. So there is no movement here. If you see, the hip, knee, and foot are almost in the same line. If you just see hip, the knee valgus is there. The foot is going for little bit of hyperpronated foot. This is front view. If you see the side view, the body, if you just see, there is not much lumbar lordosis. Here you can see there is much of lumbar lordosis. Here the knee is bending less, and here the knee is bending more with a lumbar lordosis. That means almost she is to be fallen forward. But this is seems to be very stable. This is how we need to see in a side view. This is front view and this is side view. So gender differences in lower extremity in dynamic single leg squat, how it is. Like if you see, dynamic means above the 20 centimeters of step, she is landing with the other leg with 10% of body weight. For example, 50 kilos is there, out of which 10% means 5 kilos. 10, 5. Is that right? Yeah. 5 kilos. For example, if she is doing with the left leg, dynamic single leg squat, the right leg has to be kept on the weighing machine. It has to show 5 to 10 kilos of weight, not more than that. So then that is reliable. Then you need to check about the alignment of the body. That means lower limb. So see, the hip is somewhere, the knee is going for valgus, the foot is going for little bit of pronation. And then if you see, there is not much movement in the forward flexion. The forward flexion of the trunk should be more, but here it's not happening. And here most of the times the quadriceps is activating instead of hamstrings, so which is not correct. So gender differences in core strength. So if you ask the plank by keeping one stick from the upper body, I mean just below the neck to the leg, the body is straight and then the glutes are touching to the stick. Here if you see, hyperextension is happening, that is especially in the females after the verbal cues. That means please you have to touch your glutes to the stick, then she is doing. So these are all changes is because of hormonal, that is hypermobility, or like internal anatomical variations, or because of poor neuromuscular control and then balance when compared to the males. That's why we need to work on more about the core and then required muscles of strengthening. Now return to sport criteria. So especially just go through phase wise. a pre-op phase, post-op phase, like that. So what is meant by pre-op phase? That means immediately after the injury to the surgery, that is called pre-op phase, which is very, very important. So the main goals, that is eliminate swelling. Swelling has to come down, regain full range of movement. At the same time, regain 90% of the strength in quadriceps and hamstring compared to the other side, that is non-injured leg. Most of the times what happens, the surgery can be done after the inflammation reduction, that means 2 to 3 weeks. If we do a lot of strengthening exercise for the quadriceps and hamstrings, once that quadriceps and hamstring strength almost equivalent to the other leg, then if they go for surgery, less chances of ACL, once again ACL tear will be less. Reoccurrence of injury can be will be very less. If the strength is not much, if only the swelling has come down, if the range is there but no strength, then definitely there are high chances of re-injury might happen. So if there is no 90% of strength when compared to the other side, better not to go for surgery.
ये सर्जरी करने
injury.
से पहले बता रहे हैं कि सर्जरी करने से पहले आपको टेस्ट करना चाहिए कि आपकी इंजर्ड लेग की जो हैमस्ट्रिंग और क्वाड्रिसेप्स की स्ट्रेंथ है वो, और दूसरी टांग जो आपकी ठीक है उसके 90% होनी चाहिए, तब आपको सर्जरी पे जाना चाहिए। तो आपको दोबारा एसीएल होने के चांसेस बहुत कम है। यस डॉक्टर।
Yeah. So for these outcome measures, how can we rate this? So how can we see this? Means when we do the knee extension passively, if it is 0 degrees, that is absolutely fine. Passive knee flexion, when we bend the knee flexion, if it is 125 degrees or more, then the person goes to surgery. Swelling and effusion has to be less. Strength, as I told you, 90% compared with the other side. And then single hop test. We generally do single hop test. Take the distance, like from what is the maximum distance which can be taken in a single hop, and compared with the other side. Then we take averages of 2 and then see what is correct. If it is 90%, then fine, they can go for surgery. Otherwise, better not to go for surgery. Yeah. So phase 1, recovery from the surgery. So main goals are full extension should come, settling the swelling down to mild, get the quadriceps firing again. That means a little bit of quadriceps firing, they can be doing it. So after the phase 1, we need to go for phase 2. For example, if the firing is not there, quadriceps, the patient is not able to fire the quadriceps, then we can't go to the phase 2, that is strength and muscular control. So in this phase 2, the main goals are regaining single leg balance. If the patient is standing on single leg, that is good, and regain most of the muscle strength. That means, as I told you, the strength should be increased by doing TheraBand exercises, by doing closed kinetics exercises. Different kinds of exercises are there. And this is very important, single leg squat with good control and alignment. As I previously discussed, while doing the single leg squat, hip, knee, and then ankle should almost be in the same line. If that kind of good control and then alignment is there in the single leg squat, then they can go to phase 3. So the phase 3 includes running, agility, and landings. Main goals in phase 3 are excellent hopping performance, technique. Technique means, as I told you, the hip, knee, and then ankle should be in a proper way with good biomechanical factors. And then distance. Distance should be a proper way. It's not like small distance. If she hops or if he hops, that is not correct. The patient has to, or the gymnast has to take a long hop with a good distance, with a good technique, and then you can see the endurance. Progress successfully through an agility program and modified game plan. Regain full strength and balance. So this is, as I told you, this is still phase 3. Phase 4 is the return to sport criteria. So what is the main summary for the return to sport criteria? If these points are meeting by the patient or the subject, then the person has to go for the return to sport. If these points are not meeting, then no point of going to return to sport. So what are they? So minimum 9 months from the post surgery before return to sports. So after the surgery, at least minimum 9 months of post surgery should be there. That is very, very important. And next one is clinically orthopedic surgeon has to take an MRI and then see the graft, how it is intact or little bit of any effusion is there or intact is there, how the basically graft is looking like that. The orthopedic surgeon has to decide and must meet all the following return to sport criteria before doing so. Those are all quadricep strength, not more than no more than 10% difference between limbs. That means 90% should be equivalent with the other leg. 90% of strength in the injured leg should be compared with the other leg. And then hamstring strength is also very important. And quadriceps hamstring ratio, that means less than 1.5 to 1. For example, if hamstring is having 10 strength, then this has to have 15 strength, but it should not have 2. More than 2 also it is not correct, because if the quadriceps 5 is more, that is not correct. So the quadriceps is always less than 1.5 and then hamstring is 1 strength wise. So another criteria is this is a functional hop test. So single leg 4 functional hop tests are there, and then not more than 10% difference between the other limb. And then final one is the test agility drill performed under 11 seconds. If it is not performed under 11 seconds, then the person can't go to the return to sport. So we need to follow all the criteria or fulfill all the criteria. As I told you, 4 functional hop tests. This is called single leg hop test. So the first diagram is perfect. So she has to hop as much as she can. Now if you see her hip, knee and then ankle almost in the same alignment with a good control, seems to be with biomechanics good factors, and the landing is also good. In the second diagram, if you see little bit of difference in the alignment, hip and the knee is going for valgus, and then ankle, if you see, it is going externally rotated and hyperpronated. The third, she is almost about to fall. So the last 2 are not correct. If the subject is if the subject is coming under these last two diagrams, she is not qualified to go to the return to sport activity. If the person in the first diagram as it is like that, if she is doing or if the person is doing, then she can go to return to sport criteria. 6-meter timed single leg hop test. That means we need to tape 6-meter length, and then the goal of the test is consecutively hop as fast as possible on the same leg. So that means with the same leg she has to hop single leg with 6 meters as much as possible with as much of distance, and then finally stick the final landing. The performance goal is to have, now we have to check the other limb also. First we need to check injured limb, at the same time after that we need to check the uninjured leg. Now we have to compare the uninjured leg, and then if you compare the injured limb at least has to meet 90% of the strength than the 90% of the criteria has to meet the uninjured limb, then only they can be passed. It's called triple hop test. And the third one, it's a basically consecutively hop for 3 times as far as possible. For example, this is a starting position, she has to hop for 3 times maximum as a distance, and then stick the landing and measure like with and compare with the other uninjured leg also. At the same time, there should not be 10% difference, more than 10% difference between the 2 legs. And then crossover triple hop test. This is a little bit of difficult. So same consecutively 3 hops, but here she has to cross over left and then right and then left. See, there is one big line is there, that is we can tape it in between with 15 centimeters width, and then ask the subject to hop cross left right left right. This is also three hop triple hop test. Same thing, it has to be done on both the sides, first injured limb and then another with the uninjured limb, and then compare. It should not be more than 10% with the uninjured limb. So the finally t-test for agility, it should be done within 10 seconds. If you just see, A is the starting point, B, C, D. So the subject will start from here. The distance between A and B is 10 yards. The distance between B to D, B to C is 5 yards divided. So the subject will start from here. That means from A to here, sprint from A to B, side step from B to C. That means once she reaches there, she has to go sideways to the C. From then, side step from C to D. That means in sideways, she has to move to the D from C. After that, she has to go back to from D to B in sideways, come back, sprint backwards from B to A. So this is how we need to do the t-test for agility. This has to be finished within 11 seconds. Then only she can meet the criteria for return to sport activities. So the test which I told you before, like t-test and then functional hop test like this, single leg hop test, 6-meter timed single leg hop test, triple hop test, and then crossover triple hop test. And as I told you, the quadriceps strength, how we calculate quadriceps strength means isokinetic machine. We can do with isokinetic machine or handheld dynamometer. So this is one criteria of going for return to sport activity after post ACL reconstruction. There is another return to sport criteria is that Melbourne return to sport criteria. This has 100 points, out of which the subject has to meet more than 95 or 95. Then only the person has to go for return to sport activity. There is separate form will be there, separate 100 points form will be there, so that each and everything has to be clear. So this is the score. This is for part A. Sorry. Yeah. Part A, stability swelling range, that has given for 20 points, which can be converted into 10.
Doctor, your screen is not here.
Sorry, sir?
Your screen is not visible. I think it's not shared.
1 second, sir. How is it coming, sir?
No, not yet.
1 second, sir.
I think it's your last slide.
How to do it? How to get that, sir?
You just click on share screen and then again desktop and come.
If we just say part A is 10 points, part B is 20. Like that, we have different points wise score. So which meets to 100. So out of which the subject has to get equivalent to 95 or more than 95, then only the subject has to go for return to sport. And then prevention of re-injury, that is very important. There are a lot of programs are there, Powell program. So for improving of the neuromuscular control, proprioception. So any person or any subject before going to the so before going to the sport activity, she has to finish all the exercise, proprioception, plyometrics, endurance strengthening, flexibility, strengthening exercise, and then she has to go for participation of the sport. And the key components of injury prevention program should include plyometric, balance training and strengthening, as I mentioned, performed for at least 10 minutes before every training session and game. So it is highly recommended that athletes continue with an ongoing ACL prevention program while they continue to play sports. That's
Thank
all.
you, doctor.
Thank you so much, sir.
थैंक यू डॉक्टर, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आपने बहुत अच्छा एक्सप्लेन किया है शोल्डर और एशियल को।
Sir.
बड़ा ही ब्रीफली जाके आपने बताया है। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि ये इन्फॉर्मेशन जो आपने दी है वो काफ़ी हमारे यंग कोचेस हैं, क्लब कोचेस हैं, जहाँ पे हर जगह हम फिजियोथेरेपी फैसिलिटी नहीं प्रोवाइड करा सकते, तो वो
Okay.
इन चीज़ों को लेके अपने कोचिंग के जो प्रोग्राम्स हैं, डेली प्रोग्राम्स में इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं और अपने यंग एथलीट्स की इंजुरीज होने से बचा सकते हैं। तो
Yes,
थैंक यू
sir.
डॉक्टर। कैन